Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Skills and Abilities. Today, we're going to be going over the curse known as Confuse. Confuse is a rather useful curse. It actually is. It's very useful. Even just 1 point in Confuse can be absolutely excellent in terms of survivability, or even just an oh crap skill to save your life in a dangerous situation. Say, for instance, you went to Frigid Highlands and you found a bunch of monsters there and they were just being mean to you. You could always confuse them, and in the process of confusing them, you could potentially save your life. The confused monsters have a couple rules that they follow. So, number one, they're going to continue the last action that they did before you confuse them. Number two, they can attack other confused monsters. They can attack they can attack anything. So like anything nearby, they're confused. You know, it's like a Pokemon where your Pokemon gets confused, and your Pokemon is like he hurts himself in his confusion. Like, it's silly. Like, they can attack all sorts of things. Now, the duration of Confuse is relatively low in Hell difficulty, and that's because, unfortunately, any AI modifying effect has its duration changed depending on the difficulty that you're in. So right now, I'm in normal difficulty, and you can see that the duration is currently 48 seconds at level 20. If I leave and I go to Nightmare difficulty, the duration is going to get cut in half. And this is unfortunate because Confuse is really nice in terms of, crowd control, but now it's only 24 seconds. And when you get to Hell difficulty, the duration is cut again. And all AI-controlled effects are cut this way. And you can clearly see the duration change between difficulties. As you can see now, it is 12 seconds. So even maxed out, we only have 12 seconds on this. And of course, you can have plus to skills and things like that, increasing the level, which is going to get you a couple more seconds here or there. So we're at 16.4. And it definitely helps to have Confuse at least 1 point into it, because it's very useful in terms of survivability. Personally, I think I'd probably prefer Dim Vision over Confuse, because Dim Vision works so nicely. But Confuse can also be very nice. As you can see, I can clearly confuse this entire group of monsters, and then they start fighting amongst themselves. Now, any monster that a confused monster kills, you don't get any EXP for. If you kill a monster that's confused, you still get EXP for the confused monster. There's also some quirks in the way that the confused monsters do things, because they really don't have a whole lot of control over what they're doing. They just kind of randomly run around and do whatever. But as you can see, it's extremely useful as a crowd control mechanic, just to kind of keep the monsters away from you. They will, however, still complete their last action, as you can see. So if they were chasing me at the moment that they were confused, they might still continue chasing me until they perform that action. And then after they perform that action, all of a sudden they will stop and then start fighting their, team member, or whatever you want to call it. Now, unlike Dim Vision, the problem with this, with Dim Vision, is that Dim Vision doesn't work on elites and champions and things like that. Now, Confuse doesn't work on elites and champions either. However, because Confuse can cause one of the monsters that are not elites and not champions to attack a champion, and also the champion or the elite can choose to attack a confused monster, Confuse can actually occupy the attention of a elite or champion, whereas Dim Vision cannot. So this is a clear distinction between the two abilities, and it's important to note this. Friendly auras and buffs don't work on confused monsters. So like if you have a barbarian or using shouts, or you have a paladin using auras, none of that stuff applies to the confused monsters. It's really just for crowd control. Like, you can't really abuse it in the way that you would maybe beefing up a revived monster or something like that. And it really just kind of helps you stay alive in some tough situations. It's also important to note that there are certain curses that cannot overwrite Confuse during its duration. So while Confuse is up, and I feel like the best way to do this is to go to normal difficulty so I can show you. That way I have the maximum duration, and I can just cast the other curses and kind of show you what I mean. So Confuse cannot actually be overwritten by Terror. It cannot be overwritten by Attract. And it cannot be overwritten by Taunt, Grim Ward, or Hits Blind's Target. So if I go out into Frigid Highlands and I throw this curse up, which now has a duration of 66 seconds, which should give me plenty of time for demonstration purposes. I drag a couple monsters over and make them fight each other. Once the monster is confused, I can't hit them with dim vision. I can't hit them with terror. And basically I can't hit them with attract. So once they are under the effects of confuse, they are kind of stuck with this ability. Now there are curses that you can't overwrite, so amplified damage will work. It's just kind of interesting that certain curses will not overwrite confuse, but other curses will. And it's interesting because, well, there are other curses in the game, like attract, which cannot be overwritten at all. If I cast Attract on a monster, you notice he has this special little spinny thing around his head. I can no longer overwrite him with Amplified Damage. I can no longer overwrite him with Confuse. Once they are Attract, they can be overwritten by nothing. However, Confuse doesn't have the same kind of thing going on. Confuse only has a specific number of abilities that can't override it, and they seem to be all AI controlling abilities. So Hits Blind's Target, Grim Ward, Taunt, Attract, Terror, and Dim Vision are all abilities that control or affect the way that a monster's AI works. So it seems like when the monster is under the effect of Confuse, they cannot be controlled by any other AI controlling effects in the game. It can also not be overwritten by itself, which is also kind of strange. So you would think that you could refresh the duration. So, you know, say you have a monster, he's confused, and you want to just like throw another confuse up to refresh the duration to make sure that it lasts, you know, for 2 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever. You know, maybe you wait till 65 seconds and then you recast and you're hoping that it's going to last another additional 66 seconds. But it doesn't. It has to expire before it can be reapplied, which is also a little weird. Confuse also comes on some various items. So you can get Confuse on daggers, wands, shrunken heads, circlets, and rings. And it also comes on some unique items, the Fetid Sprinkler Holy Water Sprinkler, Delirium Helmet, at a very nice level 18 with an 11% chance to cast, and also level 15 with a 10% chance to cast on the Dream Helm and the Dream Shield, which when worn in combination actually combine together to give you a 20% chance to cast level 15 Confuse, which means that it goes off pretty much all the time during the use of the Dream Helmet and the Dream Shield. I have used Dual Dreams before, and the constant proccing of the Confuse can be extremely useful and sometimes a little annoying, but for the most part, extremely useful. The monsters can still be killed, so it's not really that big of a deal, and it works out very nicely as a crowd control effect to make sure that you're not being overwhelmed. And if you do get overwhelmed, there's a very good chance that the Confuse effect will go off and save you, which is very nice. As that is part of a very high level and very popular set of items, the Dream Helm and Shield, you might want to accompany or like get used to how Confuse works. Delirium Helm is also pretty popular and can be utilized on mercenaries, yourself, you know, druid pelts, barbarian helms, all sorts of cool stuff, and also has a very nice crowd control effect. That level 18 with a 11% chance, you'll see it go off often enough that most monsters around you will be confused. It's obviously not going to protect you completely. Like, as you saw when I confused the monsters, they can still attack me. Sometimes they attack the guy next to them. Sometimes they attack me. Sometimes they attack my, my golem. Sometimes they attack, like themselves. I don't even know. It's like, it's a little strange. Their behavior is obviously, as you would imagine, it's confused. So, sometimes you end up with them attacking you. Sometimes they attack each other. If you run away, they'll change targets. And it seems like just in general, they don't really know what the hell they want to do, right? So, you can't entirely rely on Confuse to keep the monsters from beating on you. But there's a very good chance that they all won't be beating on you, right? So at least you'll have some of them probably not beating on you. I think that's pretty much it for this ability. There's really not a whole lot more to go over when it comes to Confuse. It's decent, but it's not a one-point wonder curse. A lot of the curses are one-point wonders, and this is really not quite one of them. Not unless you have a really nice, decent amount of plus to skills. And the reason is because, well, the duration issue. So in normal difficulty, yeah, it has a really nice duration and it can do pretty good. But in hell difficulty, without a decent amount of plus to skills, the duration is just too low for it to be overly useful. And most people aren't going to want to dump a whole bunch of points into Confuse to bring that duration up to a point where it's viable. Whereas utilizing items like Delirium and, Dreams can be a lot easier of a way to get a pretty high level of Confuse that does pretty decently. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watch my videos, and keep watching.